All right, so this is an update about getting in touch with a psychologist in reference to Omnipolitics16, Jenn, Jenny Lover, Heart Progress, Cartograph, that kind of thing. Surprisingly, he did not know about the virtuous pedophiles, but all the arguments that I have made from a psychological standpoint against Omnipolitics16, Jenn Lover, and Cartograph are in fact corroborated by psychology. One of the things that Omnipolitics that this psychologist brought up, the argument that children can, well, first of all, they can't consent, but Omnipolitics in some of his videos has said that, these little shits, to quote him, these little shits can feel sexual feelings. He had to correct that statement. He's misinterpreting the facts. The fact is that while children do go through a phase of development where they do play with their bodies, they are capable of feeling sexual stimulation. However, they are the point comes down to cognizance, and they can't cognizantly feel sexuality. They don't cognitively or use cognizance to determine whether they feel someone is sexually attractive or not. That part of the brain does not develop until later. Upon all other, though, all the arguments that I made in the previous videos stand. The psychological community stands with them. Like that is all. He agreed with everything I said, and he said that I had a firm grasp on the situation, and he understands why it's insulting to me, because it is a great insult that these pro-pedophile people would want to attach themselves to the LGBT community. It is insulting. And he remembers the conservatives from the 90s as well. That was one of the things that they were pushing when we were talking about gay rights and gay marriage, is that they were saying, well, if we allow gay people to have rights and gay marriages to happen, then what's next? Pedophilia, bestiality, etc., etc. So when I saw LGBTP, I kind of flipped shit, because I was like, no, you're not subscribing yourself to a sexual orientation. You're not doing it. It's not happening. The gay community worked very, very hard at obtaining our rights, and now that we have them, I don't want the conservatives to go back on that and do kind of an I told you so. And it is in psychology, it used to be considered a mental illness. It's not anymore, thank goodness, because we did research and found out one of the main proclamations behind the fact that the idea that it was a mental illness was that it was an abnormal thought process. And then we came to find out that it can't be helped, that it does just occur naturally. They were saying that homosexuals were sick individuals with perverted minds. That was where homosexuality was coming from, as a mental illness. The thing that keeps pedophilia on the mental illness spectrum is that it does incite harm onto children, and psychologically speaking, a child cannot consent. Even if they do say yes, they have no idea what they are consenting to. They aren't even, I even brought it up, and he brought it up as well, they don't have the mental capacity to consent to documents and insurance and paying bills, just a plethora of things. You can't expect them to consent to do something like that. And another thing that he brought up that I didn't bring up, because that argument I've not seen that argument been brought up by Omnipolitics or Cartograph or Jenn, is a lot of the times these pedophiles will use the argument, well, it happened in Greek and Roman times. But that is a fallacious argument, as that in the Greek and the Roman times, it was a very, very different time period in general. But what they were considering to be, like, a lot of the times they were considered apprenticeships. And what we're calling children were not necessarily children to them. You're talking about post-pubescent people in that time frame. You're talking about people who have reached puberty and probably roughly around the age bracket of 13 to 15 years old, taking on an apprenticeship with an adult, and sometimes sexual activities would take place. And what you were calling an adult in that time period, 20 to 30 years old, you were old. Like, you were lucky to make it past the range of your 30s in that day and age. People did not live as long back then. Another point that he brought up about the Greek and the Roman Empire is that, yes, they did create the foundation of democratization, but just because they did great things that define things that we do now doesn't mean that everything they did should be mimicked or copied. I mean, they also believed in slavery. A lot of the sex slaves that they had back then were slaves. And that doesn't mean that that's something that we should bring back just because the Greeks and the Romans did it. That is a fallacy. Say just because they did it, we should do it too. No, that's a fallacy. That is an actual fallacy, illustrated in logic and critical thinking. So, I did talk to the psychologist, and he agreed with the things that I've been posting. He says I'm on the right point. Everything that the points that I've made they're on cue. They do come from a psychological perspective. The psychological community would back that up. There may be some debate in some areas in the psychological community, but not a lot. Omnipolitics16. Jenn Lover, Cartograph. I am not misrepresenting pedophiles in any way, shape, or form. This is the way it is. It's harmful to children. It's psychologically proven. It's medically proven. Developmentally proven. It's just something you shouldn't do. We shouldn't be advocating for legalizing pedophilia. It's just not going to happen. I would recommend just dropping the subject. I'm waiting. Omnipolitics wrote an email to Suit saying that he was going to make Suit Yourself, saying that he was going to make a response video to them debunking his video. And we'll see if he even makes it. Hopefully he doesn't. Hopefully this is the end of Omnipolitics and Jenn and Cartograph. Hopefully they come to their senses and realize that this is a mental illness and needs to be treated, and that is recognized by the psychological community as an illness that needs to be treated. So as long as you don't touch a child and you seek treatment, you won't be in any trouble with the law. But right now, as the law stands, if you do anything to a child, or if you possess or seek out in any way child pornography, you're still part of the problem. There's still a child's life being destroyed. It's still illegal, and you will be facing charges. And that's the reality. That's the facts. That's the way it is. There's no debating this. It's not just a social pariah. It's there's logical reasoning behind why this is a crime. It's not a crime just because we decided we don't like it, and we're just disgusted by it, so therefore it's a crime. No, it's a crime because there are victims. There are victims of this crime. There are people coming out, speaking out, talking about their experiences, and talking. There are forums. There are group therapy sessions. You can find them online of where people are trying to deal with the mental trauma, the psychological trauma that has happened to them because of people doing things to them before, like, you know, before puberty, against their will, etc., etc. It all falls under the line of child abuse, rape, molestation, all those things. It is an act of violence. It is an act of abuse. You can use the rhetoric of love and all that horse shit all you want. You can use that, but I think deep down you know that's not the truth. It's not about love. It's trying to fulfill and satisfy an urge. And your urge, your sexual desire, is not worth the mental well-being of a child. It isn't. It isn't worth it. You're just going to have to accept that. And as far as it's not a sexual orientation, there's no evidence to support that. None whatsoever. Yeah, maybe you can't control what you're attracted to, but the sexual orientations are homosexual, bisexual, and heterosexual. And pedophiles can fall under those three categories as well. Pedophilia is a mental illness. Like I said, I just got off the phone with a psychologist. He corroborated everything that I had used in my arguments and said, yes, that is true. That's the facts. That is how the psychological community looks at it. That's what our studies conclude. That this is real. Okay? It's a mental illness. It is. Seek help. I just wanted an update on that I actually did finally get a hold of the psychologist. So, just so you know, my arguments are backed by a psychologist, and I even have information that while I can't turn, like Jenn and Omnipolitics, they're here in the United States where I am. Cartograph is in Australia, can't do anything about that. But what can be done is you can get a hold of the FBI or the local affiliate of the FBI, whichever state you're in. Like if you're in Kansas, the FBI would be the KBI, and you can report it to them, and they will go on a watch list. And that has been backed up by the local legal authorities that I've talked to, is that you can bring this attention, that these people are on YouTube, that hashtag Heart Progress is on Facebook and is on Twitter, and they will watch them. So that's a thing. And I'm sorry I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. Like, I know that's going to anger some people, but you can't do this. You can't go around saying that it's okay and that it should be legal to touch children inappropriately. You're an adult. You ought to know better. Kids, they don't know better. And I could go into a long story about my childhood, and I can tell you for sure. You don't know much when you're a kid. You're not aware of the evils of the capabilities the things that adults are capable of. Kids look to adults to protect them. They look to adults for safety and security, to make sure nothing bad happens to them. And you pedophiles, these pro-pedophile people, you're just wanting to throw them right on the train tracks and let the train hit them. And that's unacceptable. I said it in a previous video. Let them have their goddamn childhood, for fuck's sake. Stop trying to steal innocence away from them. It's the one and only chance they're going to have in their lifetime to be blissfully unaware of all the sick and twisted, vile, evil shit that people can do to each other. The worst they have to worry about is somebody on the bus pulling their hair. Alright? It gets deeper when you're an adult. It gets way deeper. And I have stories of that, of my own personal experience. And I'm not going to get into it. Maybe I will someday, but but I'm not going to do it now. I'd rather actually do it in a conversation with someone else. Somebody that's sane. I don't want to do it in a conversation with Omnipolitics or Cartograph or Jenn or Jenny Lover or anyone like that. I don't want to do that. I would rather do it with somebody who's logical, has got their head screwed on straight. Omnipolitics16, Jenn, and Cartograph, they're twisting facts to support their narrative. When Omnipolitics16 reads that graph that says children have sexual feelings, they're not talking about cognizance. They're talking about their genitals being stimulated, and this is part of childhood development where they start playing with their bodies. That's not something an adult needs to intervene with. That's something they do on their own. That's roughly around the time that most people discover masturbation, and that goes into puberty, but that doesn't even develop until later on in life. So just knock it off. Pedophilia is a mental illness. We're not normalizing it. We're not making it legal. It's not a sexual orientation. It's not. There are real survivors, real victims of this. Seriously. And if you look into criminal psychology of people who start going out and committing the act, you'll find a lot of the times it will result in killing a child, because a child's body is not developed for that. They are not mentally developed for that, nor are they physically developed for it. And this is backed up. I just had it backed up by a psychologist. I've had it backed up by a criminal psychologist. I've had it backed up by the law. I've had it backed up by medical evidence. So, Omnipolitics16, I may be a small voice, and I don't know Suit Yourself personally. I'm just a guy that watches his YouTube videos, but I'm still a voice in the crowd nonetheless. So, that being said, I'm out, and I just wanted to put it out there that I did actually get a hold of the psychologist. So the points I'm making are backed up by legitimate science. All right, with that, I'm out. Like, share, subscribe, comment, hit the bell button.